The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray.
Good afternoon. You're watching USALA Media, The Republican Zone. I'm your host, Drew Murray. I am here with my good friend. It's weird to say this at this point, but former Councilman David O. So welcome to my show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on again. You've been here.
Hey, my pleasure.
Was it about 4 years ago, I guess?
Yeah, the COVID, right? Interrupts everything.
COVID seems like it was just yesterday that we were here.
Yeah.
So you are now the former councilman.
Yep.
And the reason for that is because you are now our Republican candidate for mayor.
I am.
Or at least the endorsed candidate. You have to quote unquote win in March, but
to be the
May,
nominee, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So you're a Republican in the city of Philadelphia.
I'm a loved Republican.
You're a loved Republican.
There's two types of Republicans: those that are hated and those that are loved. At least. Well,
you keep getting elected, so yeah, people must love you. Why do you? So you're a city councilman for 11 years, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had to step down. Why do you want to? The question everyone wants to know: why do you want to be mayor of the city of Philadelphia?
Well, I just think our city has gone through some really hard times in the past several years. COVID was a contributor to what became the platform of really bad policies. And then with the rioting, that was another reason. And it was a knee-jerk reaction, by city leaders. And the economy, of course, is really struggling in this city. And of course, we have some real hallmarks of bad policy. Sure. Kensington Avenue, right? So in my 11 years as a council person, I started by trying to introduce smart, creative ideas, very positive things about our city, getting involved in the global economy, the creative arts economy. But towards the end, I found myself mostly trying to introduce legislation around the fact that the executive, the mayor, and the administration was not enforcing any of the laws. Like, we have laws against dumping trash. We have laws against riding through red lights 5 or 6 at a time at 80 miles an hour. We have all these laws. They're not being enforced.
Sure. Robbing a Wawa.
Yeah. So there's laws against tractor trailers parked in front of your house. The problem is when the executive branch does not enforce those laws, then council is trying to legislate a way for somebody to enforce them. But that's really difficult because we have a separation of powers. So, having served 3 terms, the issue for me is, should I run for a 4th term? And when I thought about it, first of all, for me personally, I feel like 3 terms is pretty much you've done what you can. The 4th term, I would have to think, like, what am I going to do? What's my contribution to this city as a legislator? And I would just say it's difficult. The contribution that I think Republicans provide the city is eyes and ears. And I hate to put it that way, but your presence in the room kind of limits some of the extremism and some of the shenanigans that goes on. And when I say shenanigans, what I mean is there's just a lot of collusion that occurs when people know each other so well and work with each other in many different ways. And it's good to have someone out there that will throw in things like, hey, that's not actually legal, but that's not constitutional, or things like that. And I think what's odd about our city government right now is I have not been the voice of raising taxes. I've been the voice of stop raising taxes on the poor, which people would think, oh, you're a Republican, you must be like lower the taxes for the rich, and that. But it's the exact opposite. I have been fighting with city government over illegal assessments. In my opinion, I call them illegal, and I stand by that. Assessing poor people's homes at rates that are just ridiculous and cannot stand up in any type of reasonable analysis. In fact, there was an audit done by council, and it found that the methodology of these assessments are below industry standard.
And is that methodology mostly using comps in the neighborhood? So if a house that's worth 3 times as much was built across the street, they're just automatically assessing that without even going and looking the property, or vetting any sort of process to make sure that that house is actually worth that. Worth
Drew,
what they're
as far as I can tell, they don't even do that. What they do is they have big areas, and within that area, let's call it like a portion of a zip code, you'll have, let's say, 7 very different neighborhoods, but they'll assess all the property like it was the same. Well, one of the areas is very safe. The people are well-to-do. They enjoy their life. You go to the other end, and that's the houses are kind of the same.
Sure.
But there's murder, there's carjackings. The houses are not. They have not been rehabbed.
Sure.
And so that is extremely improper. And so I think that's a baseline kind of way they do it. Yeah, you're right. They don't come out. They don't look at the properties. I don't think they do like Google Earth or something. And what you end up with is just common sense defying assessments. Now, to get to your point, on the same block, exact same properties, same real estate, same building, taxed very, very differently. I don't mean like a $10,000, $20,000 difference. I mean sometimes like $150,000, $200,000 difference.
Yeah.
Now, okay, it's bad enough when it's a nice house. But when you come to some of these really run down, houses in Philadelphia, there are poor people living in them. And now you're saying like this house is worth $375 and the one attached to it is worth $110.
Yes.
That's crazy, right? There's no way that should be happening. But the only person in council to introduce a bill to say, hey, that's wrong, is me. And both my bills were defeated. So we've come to this odd place where, as Republicans, we fear the overreaching of government. We want individuals to have rights and responsibilities and to be able to arise on their merits, right? And so we're watching government violate the law out in the open and basically pull out a daytime robbery on people's houses.
Sure. And even with those assessments, mine went up 40% this year.
Yeah.
Now, I'll be honest with you. I didn't appeal it because I think it was actually accurate. I think my house did go up in value. But there are communities that, okay, yes, maybe the house did go up that much in value, but the person's income did not go up that much. Right. So there needs to be some level of balance in how we assess things. Or maybe even change the millage rate. I don't know, not necessarily what the answer is. I think honestly, what I believe is once you buy a house, your assessed value should never go up dramatically in any year, because unless your income goes up, you're not going to be able to afford that property. Look at someone who's been in their house for 40 years,
right? And
maybe even on a fixed income now, they're retired,
right?
And then all of a sudden, Fishtown explodes like it has in the last 10 years. Your income is not going to change when your house, maybe it may have doubled in value. It may have gone from 300 to 600, but your income is, as we said, it's fixed. So there's got to be some, and there are some programs, long-term owner, there are some programs, but I don't think there are enough.
Yeah. Well, here's the backstory for people to think about, right? The city, did not manage its finances properly. And here's the thing called fiscal responsibility that no one in this city seems to care about, because fiscal responsibility means, oh, you're trying not to give me some perk or benefit that I want. No, that's not what it means. Fiscal responsibility means that of the money we have, we want to make sure that you're getting the quality things you're supposed to get. When there's no fiscal responsibility, where's that money going? And you're getting crap. We want an accounting. We want transparency and accountability. So what happens is, when like in my neighborhood, my property taxes went up pretty much double, right? And I said this: I can afford to pay it, but I shouldn't. Now I did appeal it because my neighbors are not going to appeal it, right? And so I appeal it, and I'm just saying it's wrong what you're doing. I have fought against this type of thing, and when it happens to me, I'm going to fight it. Now, if I win, it becomes a base for my neighbors to then say, hey, listen, our properties went up at this rate, And here's a house. It fought it and went down. And so that's the thing I would like to do. But the backstory on this is because of a lack of fiscal responsibility and the idea that the city needs to be an economic engine. We need people to work, pay their taxes, all that type of thing. We need tourism. We need people coming in, spending their money.
We need new residents.
Yeah, so we were short, right? We were short. We were in a deficit. Well, the federal government gave the city $1.4 billion
with a B.
With a B, right? For economic stimulus, and none of it went to economic stimulus. It went into the city's debt, which means you still have debt producing issues next year and the year after that. But the city was still short $100 million. And voila, magically, it found $100 million in new property taxes.
But there wasn't a price. But Mayor Kenny said there was no tax increase.
Yes. So what he's saying is that there was no rate increase, which is true, but there was an assessment. Now he's saying it's accurate, and I'm saying it's not accurate. So the $100 million is this 30% across the city increase, but some communities stayed the same. A little bit of communities actually went down. But when you look at the map of where the property taxes went up, it's primarily in the poorest, most crime-ridden neighborhoods of Philadelphia because they are vulnerable. And now the problem is if they can't pay the taxes, they are going to ultimately be subject to sheriff sales. And that's not something we want to do.
Can council or the mayor change the millage rate?
Council can change the millage. The problem is this. It doesn't help the individual. So let's say you're a commercial property or you have a mansion, right? And I have a little dinky house and my rate went up, let's say 100%. If you reduce the millage rate on me, let's say from let's say 20%, for example, to 15%, just making up a number. Well, what happens is now you're getting a windfall benefit because you're actually paying what you're supposed to, but now you're getting a decrease, but your property is worth millions. Sure. Mine is worth like 120,000. So the money that, by the decrease, you're losing more money on good properties. Sure. And you're not really helping me that much.
Gotcha. And because of the uniformity clause,
yes,
it needs to be the same for commercial.
Yes. So you have to have an accurate assessment methodology. Now, whenever you start talking about this, unfortunately, a lot of folk who are victims of this do not understand what you're talking about. And that's why we have this problem.
I bet many in underserved communities don't even know the fact that they can appeal.
It is a problem because, it's the same thing with, they got a lot of problems and you're just throwing one more on them, getting the back of the line. And now there's many things that they're supposed to do, but, unfortunately, they oftentimes put it off. Like we all do. In one way or the other, we put off our problems, right? But their problems are so substantial. Now, it's not like they have one substantial problem.
Exactly.
They have many, and not getting shot is like at the top of the list right now.
That might be first, putting food on the table.
Yeah.
Second.
So dealing with your ridiculous property tax might not be the first thing on your mind.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not.
Yeah.
Now, so you're one, there's 17 council people.
Yep.
There's only 2 Republicans.
Yes.
Now there's only 1. So when you try to pass legislation, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. Now, I know some of the legislation that you introduced.
Right.
I would have thought, okay, and you're considered a moderate.
Yeah.
I'm considered a moderate.
Yep.
Some of this legislation, you look at it and you say, it's a no-brainer. It's common sense. I'm going to use the word. I'm going to use common sense.
Common sense.
Because I hear that all the time when I'm out knocking doors.
Right.
Give me an example of legislation that you introduced that you thought this is a slam dunk.
I introduced a bill to create a nonprofit entity staffed by retired teachers who would receive receipts from public school teachers who paid out of their pocket to purchase items in the classroom required by state law. Now, the reason I created a nonprofit is because we weren't using any tax dollars. There was $10 million in unused tobacco settlement money that we were going to lose anyway. And for those who don't know this, the city loses money all the time. It has.
So why were we going to lose it? Because it was use it or lose it, basically?
Yeah, use it or lose it.
Why?
They had,
Okay.
for whatever, I'm not in the administration, but I found the money. I went up to Harrisburg and I asked if I could, we're going to lose this money. Can I get this money to put into a fund to reimburse teachers? And they said yes. We didn't get to that point yet, so I had introduced the bill to create the entity. I had the support of the Retired Teachers Association. They came and testified. Well, the bill was tabled, and for those who don't know, there's several ways to kill a bill. The way you should kill it is by voting against it, right? The second way is by tabling it, which means you take it off the table so you don't have to vote against it. But, how many people vote to table it? How many vote against table it? Well, I lose, so it's tabled, right?
Did it table on a full vote of council? Or did
No, it was in committee.
It was in committee.
Yeah,
okay.
so you try to kill it in committee. And the final way is by talking to the sponsor of the bill, saying, hey, listen, you don't have enough votes today, but, if you take it off, we'll talk with you, we'll work, and we'll get it passed later. And I might have done that because in the earlier part of my career, I actually thought that could happen. So I was
believed them when they told you they were there?
bamboozled, right? So over a period, I said, "Wow, you know what? That's not true." So I'm not tabling. I don't do it anymore. Like you vote against it, that's it, or you table it yourself. But I'm not tabling anything. So it does come up sometimes. Yeah, like when I was dealing with, trying to get the health commissioner to come before council to explain, like, where's the money that you got? Mm-hmm. Why are you doing these various things in a contradiction to the CDC?
This is during COVID.
During COVID.
Yep.
How is this effective? Like, you have to come before us. So the administration came up with the ridiculous idea that the health commissioner can declare an emergency indefinitely, which the health commissioner cannot. So I called Harrisburg and I asked them, and they said, no, the only person who can declare such an emergency is the Secretary of Health. A county health commissioner, Philadelphia, cannot declare an indefinite health emergency. See, in our charter, the mayor can declare an emergency. What is an emergency? An emergency is your government stops functioning with checks and balance the way that it's supposed to, right? So right now we're in an emergency. We've been in an emergency for like 3 years. And so what happens is they shut things down. They don't have to go through the normal procedures. They can just give out checks without like money, without going through council, all kinds of stuff, right? So the mayor's people said, oh, they could do it indefinitely. I said, no, you can't. But to make sure, I'm going to clarify it with a bill that you have, basically 2 weeks and 2 weeks, just like the mayor. And then you have to come for council to get an extension. Now, here's why it's a no-brainer. First of all, that's the law. Second of all, like Boston, that's what they do. And third of all, it's a Democratic mayor and a Democratic city council. It's not like we're fighting Republicans against, So it's up to council to say, oh, yeah, we hear your reasons, or you don't have to come in front of us. But they voted against it.
So council voted against having more power, theoretically, then, even though the power is within the law.
Voted against the clarification that they have the power to look at it. Because, see, people cannot go find the mayor. They can find their district council person. They can find their at-large. They sit behind us. When they do sit behind us, they can come online. Like, we're much more accessible. So if you're someone who's saying, hey, listen, this is really not doing us any good. There's a lot of counter issues I want to bring in. The CDC said this. You can come to me, but now what can I do about it? Because once the bill was defeated, there's no process to go through.
And these are all bills that you would think that, like the teacher reimbursement bill. Yeah, I would have thought that was introduced by Helen Gibb.
Right. Some progressive Democrat.
Someone who is very that education is their focus. Not that education isn't a Republican focus, or that at least that's what people want to lead you to believe. And they voted it down. Now, over COVID, we heard the defunding of the police. We saw officers, use more force than some people thought needed.
Right. Yes.
I saw some videos where I was taught growing up, you don't ever touch a police officer. And if you do,
Yeah.
then you better be ready for the consequences
Right.
because they have a gun. But you also introduced a bill, and this would have been something I thought, everybody said every officer needs tasers, even though we want to defund the police, we want to make sure they have tasers. You introduced a bill that, again, I read it in the papers. To me, I would have thought a Democrat, number one, introduce it.
Yep.
Minimum force training.
Yes.
You would think this is an absolute no-brainer. Something, even the FOP, I'm sure would have been like, absolutely, why not train us on how to deal with situations better?
So one of the things is minimum force training is very much advocated by a lot of police experts and military experts.
And you're in martial art.
I'm in martial
art. You do
arts,
martial arts, so you have a background in this.
Yeah, I have military training.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is you cannot simply train people to go in fifth gear. You do have to teach them to go in first gear and sometimes reverse, right? If the only thing you're teaching people to do is like put it in fifth and hit the gas, that's what you're going to get. And one of the reasons that has developed is because we're a society that is very armed. And so criminals may have deadly weapons, right? And even when you're doing a domestic disturbance, somebody might have a gun. And so in the United States of America, we're much more sensitive to the fact that people have deadly force. Mm-hmm. When you go to other countries, for example, people don't have guns. It's not in their constitution. Therefore, it is common that the police, when they interact with unruly citizens, drunk, all that, they do not pull out their gun and shoot someone. It's just not, it's just not the normal course of things. So, and the people are very confident that the police are not going to shoot them. It would be bizarre that just because you're drunk and unruly, even if you're trying to punch a police officer, he's going to pull out his gun and shoot you, right? So they are trained how to handle people. They are physically fit. They're physically trained. They have to be calm. They have a gun, but they don't go to the gun because basically folks don't have guns, right? They may have knives. When you come to the United States, yes, it is a problem because if you're a police officer and you're just dealing with some minor incident, the person might pull out a gun and shoot you, right? So you have a legitimate level of fear. Go to the other side. Does the other person have a reason to be fearful that the police are going to come out and shoot them? Maybe, right? It depends on your perception. So one of the things we can do is we can train the police to when under stress and using muscle memory and reacting without thinking, that they choose the correct gear, not always fifth gear. Sometimes it's a teenager, sometimes a senior citizen, and it doesn't mean they don't have fear. It doesn't mean there isn't a legitimate reason, but once all this is coming on them to make the right decision, right? We just had and I wasn't there, so I'm not going to say, we just had a federal agent shoot a dog in Center City, right? And the female owner is there over her dog, right? Was that an overreaction? I don't know. The person fears something, right?
Sure.
That's subjective. What it is, however, is it's human physiology and psyche. You are built to protect yourself. So if I'm someone and someone's got a knife, my body is supposed to bring them up closer. My body's not supposed to say like they're twice as far away. So to save yourself, your body is shooting adrenaline up, your blood sugars, your blood pressure, tunnel vision, deafness. You are just focused on the danger, and the danger is enhanced. But we're not living out in the wild anymore. So most people, when they're freaked out over deadly, confrontations, they're not calm. Their heart's beating and all that stuff. Well, it's no different for people who are authorized and charged with protecting.
And it's a stressful
law.
job. It's already a stressful job.
Yes. So you want to make sure that in training officers, you train them how to deal with each situation. Deadly force, non-deadly force, minimum force. Non-deadly force is like clubbing someone over the head. It could kill them. Minimum force is no force or kind of redirecting them, being watchful. And usually you do it with other officers, right? The problem with a lot of what we've seen, let's say in Memphis, Tennessee, is you have one human being doing one part of the kind of controlling the person, right? I don't know what the other person is doing. Maybe he need him in the sternum, right? The third person maybe have a knee on his solar plexus. Like we are not working as a unit.
Sure.
And now, for example, if you and I are evenly matched, you give 100%, I give 100%, there we are, right? But what if I give 50%? But there's 5 of me. You're freaked out because there's 5 people.
Sure.
You're on the ground. You're struggling, Max. Your heart rate's going. You can't breathe, because your body is responding in a way. And even though I'm saying, hey, listen, I'm not really hurting this guy, there's 4 other people on you, right?
Yep.
So we're not coordinated. So why don't you train people?
It's like muscle memory too.
Yeah, muscle memory.
Now, so what happened to this? So you introduced the bill in council.
Yeah. So what happens is it was defeated, right? It was
committee and
no, it was a resolution because how it works is this: I can't make the mayor do things.
Okay,
it's illegal, right? But because we do the budget and because we represent the citizens, we say, listen, we urge you to pick up minimum force training, and there will be some costs involved, and we're going to support that because. Fundamentally, I mean, if you're a police officer and I introduce minimum force training, let's say you like it. Well, where are you going to go train? You're working. Now it's your day off. Are you supposed to come to the academy?
Sure.
You got wife and kids. First of all, are you getting paid? What if you get injured? Is this workers' comp? Like it has to be made convenient for you. So typically it'd be like there'd be a approved program, approved instructors somewhere near your home. You use a voucher. You got health insurance. You got workers' comp. You got injured on duty. You got all those things. So are you doing this on your vacation time? No, it's part of your job. So instead of, let's say, going here or there, you take like 3 hours, show up here, spend an hour, with your lesson, getting ready, getting showered, all that stuff. And that's part of your job. That's the way it's supposed to work. So in order to make an effective program, I can't say, hey, look, Drew, I require you on the weekend to go study this stuff. And by the way, you're going to pay for it. And if you get hurt, that's on you too. So that's why it's a resolution. But what happens is, council members, opposed it. And they come up with all kinds of reasons, which I don't find legit
at all. Was it across the board? Did you have any support, do you think?
No, the only 2 people who voted for were me and Brian O'Neill.
The 2 Republicans.
The 2 Republicans, right? Because this is now on party lines or something. And it's not because all the Democrats on council don't like it. It's because they got friends on council, and those friends are vehemently against this. And they got a choice. Do I vote in a way they don't like, or do I vote in a way they like?
But who would oppose something like this? It's if everyone is saying we think our police force, and I say our police force, Philadelphia police and other forces around the nation, if the belief is they're using too much force, why would you not want to spend the money?
So as far as I can tell, Drew, there was a shooting of Walter Wallace Jr. Famously.
He had a knife.
He had a knife, right? And what the family said is, we want to make sure that every officer has a taser because the officers did not have tasers. They were not equipped with tasers. So we introduced legislation to fund a purchase of a taser so everyone had it. 3 council people voted against the tasers, right? So that's,
do you want to tell me those 3, or do you want to?
No, I'll tell you. It was Helen Gim, Kendra Brooks, and Jamie Gaudier.
I assumed it was those 3.
Yeah. The reason is that I believe, because everybody's got reasons. I believe their reason is, one, they felt the police are overfunded, too much of the budget. That you could take a portion of the budget and invest it in things that have greater long-term effects in fighting violence. And that fundamentally, the police are not the answer. So give them tasers or not, that's not the answer. But I feel, and you'd have to ask them, that part of it was they had committed to defund the police, and they never actually did defund
Sure.
the police, right? So that's what I thought. So once we get to minimum force training, you know, the reason why I introduced the resolution is because of what we just talked about. I could tell you this is how you do a layup, but until you get a basketball in practice, you can't do it. I could have a great plan where you're going to dribble up the side, toss it to me, alley-oop style, and I'm going to dunk it, right? Except I can't dunk, right? So when you legislate something from above and so far away from what's happening in reality, it's easy to do. You make rules. Don't do this, do that. But when you're on the ground, it's not like that. And so from a military perspective, you know, you have ground commanders. They're on the ground. You don't have someone back in the Pentagon, you know, micromanaging everybody. You know, I could easily say, hey, listen, you should have this equipment, this equipment. Now your rucksack is 250 pounds. And then we say, like, sprint. You know, like, okay, it's easy for me to say, right? As a rule maker sitting in my desk, right? And so what we're saying is, look, you got to train them in a way that is realistic so that when these things happen, you know, they respond, you know, in a way that you want. At least they have. My thing is, who is liable? It's not just the police officers. It's the city of Memphis for not training them properly and then not recruiting properly. There's things that we're doing nowadays in response to what the public wants, but it doesn't work out. See, the thing is, the public can have an opinion, right? I have an opinion too. You're a doctor. Here's my opinion. But if you follow my opinion, you'll be sued for malpractice. I'm not a doctor, right? We listen to the whims of the people. We listen to their passions. Very important. It doesn't mean you start doing things that you know won't work because it's popular. What you're going to end up doing is getting not reelected. And that's the price you pay for basically being a conscientious public servant.
So we're coming to the end, believe it or not. We're gonna bring you back after you win the primary. But it's interesting. I'll say this, just a very quick story. When I was knocking doors yesterday, there was a man and a woman. One was a Democrat, one was a Republican, in the same household. And they both read my palm card and they said, Drew, this is common sense. This is not something that should be Republican or Democrat. This is all just common sense. And all those bills that you just talked about, it's common sense. But for some reason or another, and I'm not saying this is just a Philadelphia municipal issue, it's on a state and federal issue, on a state and federal level, we're losing common sense in
we're
government.
Very polarized. And because we're very polarized, we have extremes.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them represent the common ideas. But part of it is that people in the middle aren't voting. They really need to come out and vote.
I say that all the time. People need to come out and vote, and maybe for people like us, they might want to write a check as well. So you know that's true as well. Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. We're definitely going to have you on again right after the primary, after you win the primary.
Well, good luck to you too. You know.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. I think we'll go.
We'll need you in November.
That's right. So I want to thank everyone for watching USALA Media. This is the Republican Zone. I'm your host, Drew Murray, with my friend David O. Have a great day.